2, 3. So, who is Haim Eshed and why is he so important? Well, in 2020, this happened.
Aliens exist and President Trump knows about it. That's according to Israel's former space security chief. In an interview with an Israeli newspaper, he said the aliens have been waiting until today for humanity to develop and reach a stage where we will understand in general what space and spaceships are.
Well, this is quite a story, and it comes from the man who headed Israel's space security program for nearly 30 years, Haim Eshed.
Break out the theremin because this next story is just begging for a spooky sci-fi background. After 30 years at the helm of the Israeli space security program, and after receiving 3 Israeli security awards, retired Israeli general and respected Professor Haim Eshed is now unveiling that yes, there are aliens among us, yes, Israel has made contact with them, and no, humanity is not ready for them. Also, before you start doubting his words, the 87-year-old Eshed was clear in his recent interview with Yediot Ahronot News that he's not talking about immigration, but rather about a Galactic Federation complete with an underground base on Mars, where there are American and alien representatives apparently present. He also explains that President Trump both knows about them and was on the verge of disclosing their existence, only to be persuaded not to by the Federation.
Okay, spoiler alert, we did find him. However, he didn't want to give an interview. But we did find out some interesting information nonetheless. In 2020, he made these claims in an article for the Yediot Ahronot, which is a Tel Aviv-based, widely read daily newspaper in Israel. Then he elaborated in a book around the same time. Then he disappeared, not seen in public, on TV, news productions again, never to give an interview since. So what happened to Haim? And why is he such an important figure? Well, in order to first understand his credibility, we need to understand where he came from and his background. Haim Eshed is an Israeli professor of aeronautics and astronautics, a retired brigadier general in the Israeli military intelligence, and the former director of the space program for the Israeli Ministry of Defense. With nearly 30 years in that role, he launched 20 Israeli-made satellites and is considered the father of the Israeli space program. He also chaired the Space Committee of the National Council of Research and Development and served on the steering committee of the Israeli Space Agency. He made those comments in 2020, so why has his name been resurfacing more recently and why are we talking about it again? It could well be because of somebody called Colonel Carnell.
What you're saying is extremely consequential and very important, and I know that a lot of people here even perhaps may not believe that statement.
Right. Well, probably a better way to ask that is how can the folks in the audience come to the, a common understanding of what this phenomenon is? And so there's sort of 2 tracks here. One is from first principles and another is actually from the data. So let's take a look at the data. So we can look at some folks that have very high level access to information, like Paul Hellyer, who is the defense chief for Canada, has come out and said the same thing. We can look at Haim Eshed, the head of Israel's, or former head of Israel's Space Force, has said the same thing. Chris Mellon, Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intel, SAPCO, has essentially said the same thing.
Haim makes these claims and they're extraordinary. They hit numerous news outlets out there, and as we've seen from Colonel Carnell, he credits him with credibility and uses him as a prime example of somebody in a position to know, with 30 years in the space agency in Israel. So where does he go? He just disappears. So I reached out to Haim Eshed and asked for an interview. I got a read, but not a response. I then contacted Hagar Yanai. Hagar is his friend and the author of the book. I said, "Hi Hagar, I'd like to talk to you about the book, The Universe Beyond the Horizon, Conversations with Professor Haim Eshed." To which she replied, "Hi Jimmy, thank you, but Professor Haim Eshed is not giving interviews." I clarified, "Hi Hagar, I understand. Would you be prepared to discuss your book with me? It's fascinating, thanks, Jimmy." To which she replied, "I am also not giving interviews." So she's not talking. I also tracked down the publishing company Keita Publishing, or Keita Publishing. That's weird, right? Why would a publishing company responsible for making money selling books not want the UAP Files podcast or any other podcast or news organization to promote their book, to sell books. It's just good business. We've got a good 200,000 followers and subscribers across all of our platforms, Instagram, Substack, YouTube, Spotify, etc. It makes sense to talk about a book, a renewed interest. Carl Nell's now talking about it. Make some money, right? I mean, that's publishing, that's promotion, but silence, nothing. Strange. So we've established that Haim Eshed doesn't want to talk. That Hagar, who wrote the book, the Universe Beyond the Horizon, Conversations with Haim Eshed, she doesn't want to talk, and the publishing company that put this book out, Kita Publishings, they don't want to talk either. I find this really strange. We're not going to be able to solve that question in this video, unfortunately. I've tried my best. I've tried to contact everybody that I can, and as you can see, I'm not getting very far. So let's put that aside for a second. What are these claims? Haim makes 5 core claims in the book. First being the existence of the Galactic Federation. He says that there is a galactic federation of various extraterrestrial species that have been in contact with Earth for years. This organization aims to understand the fabric of the universe and has agreements with governments, particularly in the States. So the secret cooperation with the United States. He says the US has entered into secret agreements with the Galactic Federation, and that these agreements involve cooperation in scientific research and the exchange of advanced technology. Now, this isn't the first time we've heard about this Galactic Federation and cooperation with the United States. We'd also heard about it from the previous Canadian Defence Minister, Paul Hellyer, who did the media tour not that long ago talking about the Galactic Federation and what the government knows about UFOs.
Why do you say that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying over our heads?
Well, because I know that they are. They've been visiting this planet for thousands of years. And there is what is called a federation of these people.
A galactic federation, no doubt. So moving on, underground bases on Mars. Now, Haim says that there are secret underground bases on Mars where American astronauts and alien representatives collaborate on research. Now, this is an interesting one because more recently we've been seeing things coming out of NASA, new discoveries. Mars and the Moon have underground tubes so big they could host astronaut bases, scientists say, and artificial intelligence is uncovering underground caves on Mars, not to mention reservoirs of liquid water found deep in the Martian rocks. So moving on, presidential knowledge. He alleges that several US presidents, including Dwight D. Eisenhower and Donald Trump, were aware of these extraterrestrial contacts. However, this information had been kept secret to prevent mass hysteria and because humanity is not yet ready for that kind of a revelation. Now, let's not forget that when Eisenhower's in power, Project Blue Book was running. It had been set up the year before he came into power in March 1952, initially stood up by President Harry Truman. Project Blue Book was set up to apparently investigate UFO sightings and reports of extraterrestrials, and it was run by consultant and astronomer J. Allen Hynek. It ran for 17 years. On top of this, the first ever director of the CIA, Roscoe Henry Hellencotter, wrote to Congress in a letter dated February the 22nd, 1960. He made this statement whilst President Eisenhower was still president. Now, in this letter to Congress, the CIA director wrote that he believed that some of the UFOs could indeed be intelligently controlled vehicles, and that high-ranking Air Force officers were soberly concerned about UFOs. Through official secrecy and ridicule, many citizens were led to believe the unknown flying objects were nonsense, although he did not speculate on the origin to Congress publicly. So not a lot from Dwight D. Eisenhower, but what about Donald Trump?
Before we go, one of the things you have as president is the access to all the information in the world, all the mysteries out there. And I was just struck in the last couple of weeks, we're reading more and more reports of Navy pilots seeing lots and lots of UFOs. Have you been briefed on that? What do you make of it?
I have. I think it's probably, I want them to think whatever they think. They do say, I mean, I've seen and I've read and I've heard, and I did have one very brief meeting on it, but people are saying they're seeing UFOs. Do I believe it? Not particularly.
Do you think you'd know if there were evidence of extraterrestrials?
Well, I think our great pilots would know. And some of them really see things that are a little bit different than in the past. So we're going to see. But we'll watch it. You'll be the first to know.
before you leave office, will you let us know if there's aliens? Because this is the only thing I really want to know. I want to know what's going on. Would you ever open up Roswell and let us know what's really going on there?
So many people ask me that question.
I know it sounds almost ridiculous, but it's actually the real question I want to know.
It sounds like a cute question, but it's actually, there are millions and millions of people that want to go there, that want to see it. I won't talk to you about what I know about it, but it's very interesting.
During Trump's first term, he also established a Space Force and confirmed the authenticity of some UFO-related videos released by the Pentagon, but that's about it. Preventing nuclear catastrophes. Haim's final claim is that the aliens have intervened in human affairs to prevent nuclear disasters and that their advanced technology has been observed and studied by Earth's governments for decades. Okay, so they're the key claims that were in the book and shared across the world in multiple different news outlets. Now, there's a possibility that the reason that he's gone quiet is because his comments have been misrepresented or he's been mischaracterized. So I tried to find any corrections made by either the author of the book or the publishers or Haim himself. And the only thing that I found is this. Author Hagar Yanai wrote on Facebook shortly after the book was released, "This book that I signed as a notebook was received with a great media noise. That is the wild fantasy of every writer." A week after the publishing, Jimmy Kimmel dedicated an opening monologue to him, and the NBC network turned to the White House, the Pentagon and NASA to get responses to him. News channels all over the world are about Professor Eshed, and every day we accept requests for interviews from media tools in Israel and around the world. I repeat, Professor Eshed is not interviewing on this subject, and neither am I. The book was written to inspire youth to explore the wonders of the universe we live in. Professor Eshed believes that humanity has hope if we understand that we need to calm down, respect each other and invest in education of young people. Also this morning he told me that he wants to light the way for people and say that there is hope, especially through education. These are his deep beliefs and everything else is media spin. Clear as mud. Well, it seems like she's saying that it's been taken out of context and that wild statements have been made and that people have been mocking Haim, Jimmy Kimmel, for example, in his opening monologue where he mocks Haim and Donald Trump wouldn't be able to keep this secret because of the bravado, blah, blah, blah. She had the opportunity to clarify which specifics within the book have been taken out of context, and it doesn't seem like she's done that, and I've looked, believe me. Something like the Galactic Federation talking to politicians and telling them not to say anything because humanity's not quite ready yet. I mean, that's quite a specific thing that you think she could clarify. Is that true or is that not true? What part of it's been taken out of context? And she's not doing that. What I find the strangest is that when she's been offered the opportunity to come on and talk about her book, not just with me, but with other people out there, and there've been lots and lots of requests, she's turned them all down. Now, as an author, unless you're top level bestsellers, you're not going to be making a ton of money, and so a renewed interest in your book could sell. Now, an example of this, we've got, like I said earlier, around 200,000 across all of our platforms that follow this that could watch the podcast. I appreciate we don't get those kind of views on the podcast, but even so, a few hundred books, 1,000 books extra, that's a lot of money in her pocket for her family. I get that Haim probably doesn't get a kickback from that because he's the subject of the book as opposed to the author. But why wouldn't the publishers and why wouldn't the author want to have a renewed interest in their book and make some extra money? That doesn't make any sense. Look, we're not going to be able to cover why, we're not going to be able to resolve this case, but I thought it was interesting to try and figure out where they are, what their mindset might be, and if there's been anything new since that book was published back in 2020. So there isn't. That's the end of it. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.